Hey, Earth Scientists, we're going to take a quick overview of the week just so you guys can get a little bit further information about what we're studying in our final week for astronomy. So we're mostly focusing on energy this week, energy specifically in the solar system and within the celestial bodies. So your discussion question here, can we live without the sun, is a discussion to help you hypothesize and use some of your evidence-based information to help you kind of get across your points and your thoughts about if you think we can live without the sun. And also remember that your discussion post should be between 4 to 5 sentences in length if you expect to receive full credit. Most of your discussions are worth 10 points. And if you have gotten fewer than 10 points on one of your discussions, then it's because some of you have been posting just one sentence as your paragraph. One sentence is not a paragraph. And also, I appreciate that some of you have been posting comments to other students. So that's great that you all have been doing that. So this video here is going to help you to understand if we could live without the sun and why or why not, and what is beneficial about having the sun available and accessible for us. Your notebook, some of you I think have been having difficulty in figuring out how to open your sharing settings for your online notebooks. So one thing I wanted to point out here is that this little box here is gray on my view. That allows for me to be able to share a document with you, and for every single document that you see on Canvas, whether it is in your regular science class or whether it's on here, it has been shared with you and the sharing settings have been modified. So as you're sharing a document, make sure that you hit that. It should be a blue button for you when you get ready to share or submit. And also, I know some of you will click on this, or some of you will make a copy for yourselves. Just make sure that you actually go back into Canvas to submit your assignments, because some of you are not necessarily uploading, and that's why some of you haven't gotten full credit. You haven't gotten all your points, and your grade may be lower than what it should be, because I imagine most of you have completed all your work, but that document may just be floating around somewhere in the internet, somewhere in Google, and just has not been uploaded. So please make sure you do that so I can give you credit for your assignment. So there are different sizes with different types of stars, and this video will help you to have a little bit better of an understanding of that and where our sun falls on that spectrum. Here's the meat of the information. So learning about the different types of stars and the different sizes of stars. So stars begin their life cycle as a nebula, which is basically just a big ball of cloud dust, and then that will eventually condense into what we recognize as stars. So this cloud, this nebula cloud, will become larger until its gravity allows for it to collapse and to basically condense. And so then it will become really dense, and nuclear fusion is going to take place, and we'll look specifically at nuclear fusion in just a minute. But that allows for the star itself to get a lot hotter. So it can be 10 million degrees Celsius, and that is when it's recognized as becoming a baby star. It's a new star, and that radiation from that particular star, because it's so hot, that energy is radiating outward, and it's going to knock dust and chunks of rock and debris away from it. And so that can help to form different planetary bodies, especially when it gets pulled into the gravity area of another body in space. So as the gravity grabs hold of it, then it will become perhaps revolving around that particular object, like how the planets revolve around the sun. So the sun is predicted to eventually become a white dwarf star, and so depending on the size of the star, it can have a little bit of a different life cycle. So our sun is about right here in age, so it's about like 4.5 billion years old, so it's considered to be in this yellow dwarf time frame. So eventually it's going to end up becoming a red giant and then red dwarf. So our sun has about like 8 or so billion years of its life left. And depending on the size, if it's average size like the sun, then it's going to be in this category here. And if it's a much larger star, then it will follow this kind of trajectory. So our sun is kind of midway here, so it'll eventually become red giant, and then will eventually be white dwarf. And stars that are much larger, starting at a nebula, if it's a massive star, so much larger than what our sun is, then it will become a red supergiant, and then a supernova, and a black hole. And one thing that's interesting to note is that some of the older stars, as they have become supernova and released material into space, some of that metal has actually gotten contained within our sun. So not only is our sun going through this nuclear fusion process in putting hydrogen atoms together and fusing those hydrogen atoms to become helium, but it actually contains metals from previous stars, from older stars. So I think that's a little fun fact for you. So this radiation that's being released from the sun is going to eventually reach the Earth. So we're at a perfect location to be able to get some of that warmth and that heat energy. So all of the heat energy, though, all the radiation from the sun does not reach the Earth's surface. We are fortunate to have an atmosphere that helps to protect us. So the ozone layer is the specific layer of the atmosphere that helps to absorb some of that harmful UV radiation, that ultraviolet radiation, so that we don't burn up. And we know that the sunlight is very important to life on Earth, which you'll look at in a few minutes. So photosynthesis, photo means light, and photosynthesis is going to require that sunlight in order to produce glucose and oxygen. So those are important things for animals to have as well. So because of the Earth's tilt and because the Earth is spinning, it's rotating, that will allow for differential heating. So there's a couple different types of differential heating. So water has a high specific heat capacity, and that means that water is going to take a really long time to heat up and also a really long time to cool down. So water retains heat. It doesn't quickly change temperature. Land is the opposite. So land has a low specific heat capacity, so it's going to heat up quicker and cool down quicker. So that helps to generate winds, that differential heating of our surface. And also the location of where the sunlight is hitting different areas of the Earth is also going to make an impact too. So because of Earth's tilt, we've got the seasons, of course, but also we have direct sunlight shining on the equator. So the equatorial regions are going to be much hotter, whereas the sunlight that is reaching the poles is going to be indirect sunlight. So instead of this sunlight going full force onto the equatorial region, it's more of an indirect long distance here, so it's going to stay cooler. So this video will help you to have a better understanding of fission versus fusion. So basically, if you just use your stems, your stem fizz means split apart. So fission is going to be starting as one and splitting apart, and then fusion is going to be fusing, literally starting as two and then coming together, and that's going to refer to the nucleus of the atom. So for example, in the sun will fuse hydrogen atoms, so you have two hydrogen atoms, so we'll fuse those together to where you have a helium atom. So that's basically what happens with fusion, and then again, splitting apart is what fission is. So your halfway learning targets are going to be looking at specifically how that solar energy reaches the Earth's surface and why we don't burn up. So Earth's magnetic field is what protects us, and that allows for life to exist on Earth. So the rays in the form of radiation that are going to be emitted, that energy that's emitted from the sun, gets kind of deflected by the magnetic field. So that allows for the radiation to kind of swoop around the Earth. And you can also see that in the auroras. So the aurora borealis, the northern and the southern lights, those are evidence for these ions, for these highly charged electrons being in our atmosphere, and that's radiation, that energy kind of being deflected and interacting with our atmosphere. So the auroras are evidence for that taking place. And just to kind of show you where the auroras are, we'll be looking at the atmosphere pretty soon. So the thermosphere is this layer of the atmosphere here, and this is where you have the auroras. And then your ozone layer, which we were just looking at, is in the stratosphere. So we're down here on the Earth where our weather takes place in the troposphere. So this is your kind of going upward in the layers of the atmosphere. So we'll encounter the ozone layer, which protects us from the harmful radiation and basically blocks that, absorbs that so that it's not heading down to Earth. And so we're not exposed to all that harmful UV radiation. So why does life exist on Earth? Well, we have a lot of factors that go into that. One reason that we were just looking at is the magnetic field. So because of Earth's magnetic field, that allows for the deflection of rays from the sun so that we don't burn up. We're also at the right distance from the sun, so that allows for us to have that warmth and that light and heat energy, but we're not too close. So we're at the right distance. We also have an atmosphere that we can breathe. We have oxygen, and that oxygen was released into the atmosphere and is released into the atmosphere through the process of photosynthesis. So the earliest life on Earth, about 3.5 billion years ago, was bacteria, and that photosynthetic, that cyanobacteria, is going to have gone through photosynthesis and released oxygen as a result of that process, as one of the products of going through photosynthesis. So eventually all that oxygen accumulated, and that allows for us to be able to breathe. And we also have water, which we know is important to life. So having that access to fresh water is beneficial to us and being able to live on the Earth. So this is your last learning activity, and this is basically just looking at the question, can life live on other planets? Can life exist on other planets? So this TED Talk is from an astronomer that is working with NASA with the Kepler project. So this will help you to kind of have a little bit of some different perspectives there. And your last activity to complete in here is a discussion. So thanks, guys. Your test will be available soon, so check for that back in Canvas and take it when you are ready. Make sure that you have looked through your notes and your information to review first.